Whitaker, and my family is with me this morning. And I think during our fellowship meal, I'm going to do a formal introduction of our work and our family. So I want to get started this morning. We're grateful for your presence. This is an exciting time for a church. My family has the privilege of traveling the country, and we have already had 27 churches enrolled. We've been to 27 congregations this year. And so we travel the 50 states, and we train churches how to grow, and we focus on evangelism. We're focusing on congregational evangelism. It's a concept that many church members have never heard, but it is a biblical concept, and we're going to use the model of 1 Corinthians 12. For the body is not one member, but many. Some are hands, some are eyes, some are feet, and so we understand that the scriptures teach that in order for the church to be a functioning body, we need all the parts working together. And that is the congregational model for evangelism. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Grateful for your presence. We have a lot of material to cover. If you have your Evangelism Simplified Guidebook, I need you to open it up. Go ahead and turn to the very last page. It says Notes. I need you to write down evangelism.housetohouse.com. Don't put a www in front of that because it's not the World Wide Web. It's an internal website designed for members of the Church of Christ. So you won't find this on Google. This is training material. We want to train the saved to teach the lost. And that part of that is providing you the training videos, and part of that is requiring or giving you downloads for you to use at home. Now you'll notice on the screen behind me there's a QR code. If you understand QR code, place your phone on it, smartphone, bring up your camera app, hit the link, and we need to go ahead and get your name and email address. So if you do not understand QR code, it's okay. Since the time of Adam and Eve, we have used something called clipboards. And so we're going to go ahead and have you sign your name and email address. We're going to get you enrolled into our training, meaning that we're going to send you every week free training material. That training material will come in the form of an email on Wednesday morning and on Friday. And so if we can have these passed around the auditorium, we'll make sure to provide the non-QR codes. We'll make sure to get you that information as well. So we want to provide training. Training's important. If you do not have the training, you will not succeed. And so training comes in the form of videos. It comes in the form of bullet point sheets. And so we're going to be sending those to you on a weekly basis. So be looking for those in your email box. And if you don't see them, you need to go to your spam folder and just make sure your program understands that we're not spam. We are the School of Evangelism, and we're equipping the saints with the training and tools they need to succeed. So evangelism.housetohouse.com. In 2018, we started this school. We're traveling the nation, training congregations. And the Bible says in Proverbs 11:30, the fruit of the righteous is the tree of life, and he that winneth souls is wise. So there is not a wiser course of action for you to take this morning. And so I commend your eldership for putting this training seminar together. I believe it's been over 2 years in the making for us to get to the congregation. We have about a 2-year waiting list. And so we're thankful to be with you even this morning. Brother,
yes, can you go back to the previous slide with the barcode or the QR?
Yes, I can. And so that is the QR code. If you don't use the QR code, it's okay because we have clipboards. Again, you can put your name and email address, and we'll make sure to provide you that information. So we want to go ahead and get started this morning. We have a lot of material to cover. One of the biggest challenges we have in evangelism is helping the brethren develop faith. Brother, we live in a culture of unbelief in our churches. Our churches, by and large, do not believe evangelism works. So sitting before me is Mount Everest, and I've got to overcome a mountain, meaning that I have to help a church understand that you can succeed in America. You don't have to go to Jamaica to evangelize. You can evangelize in your community. In order for us to understand the need for evangelism, I want us to take notice of just a few numbers. In the year 2000, we had 13,155 churches of Christ. In the year 2009, we have 12,629 churches of Christ. In 2015, we have 12,300 churches of Christ. In 2018, we had 11,965 churches of Christ. In 2021, we had 11,905 churches of Christ. Does anybody see a pattern? Brethren, we're losing churches of Christ. They are shutting their doors at an alarming rate. We're watching the Church of Christ one by one vanish from off our land. And when you transfer that into membership, it doesn't get any better. For in the year 2000, we had 1,265,000 church members. In 2009, we had 1,224,000 church members. 2015, 1,180,000 church members. 2018, 1,128,000 church members. 2021, 1,112,000 church members. Brethren, we are hemorrhaging church members. We're watching the Lord's church decline at an average pace of now about 5% a year. We're looking at a church of Christ that's fossilizing before our very eyes. And if we do not address this problem, we are going to continue this decline, and the projections are not good. The church of Christ is aging out. The Church of Christ in this country, if we do not reverse the trend, is going to be very difficult to find across this nation. The statistics are very obvious. Anyone who looks at these numbers, any director of a school of preaching, any brotherhood work, any Christian university knows we are in trouble. And so this morning, we need to understand that this is the calling card of our day. There is nothing more important a church can do than focus on reaching the lost in their communities. We are not here to teach you how to reach the Christians in Huntsville. We are here to teach you how to reach the sinners in Huntsville, how to reach the lost in Huntsville, because we're not competing in the kingdom for who can attract the most Christians. We are looking at how do we reach lost people in our community. I want to put this into a historical perspective. In 1906, we had 85 million people in this nation. We had a population in the church of 159,000. Now that's a ratio of 1 to 535. Now because I'm in Huntsville, Alabama, I'm going to assume you understand a ratio. Because Huntsville, Alabama, I understand that we've got to have just a few folks here this morning that work with numbers. But for those of us who don't on a regular basis, let me put it into very plain language. That means you're going to cross the hills of 535 people. You're going to look for them, and every time you count 535, you've got one Christian. That's the ratio in 1906. Now, in 1946, 40 years later, of course, the U.S. Census grew the population 141 million. Now we have 682,000 Christians. The ratio, though, look at this, was cut in half. So we now have one Christian for every 207 people. You're walking across the hill country of Huntsville, and you come to one Christian for every 207 people. Now, 7 years later, notice what the population of the country, 160 million. Notice the membership in the Lord's church. It shot up to 1.5 million. That's a ratio of 1 to 106. Can you imagine living in a country where every 106 people you come across, you go to the mall, you count 106 people, and you got a member of the Church of Christ. Brother, we weren't finished. We went in 1967. We now have one Christian for over 84 people. That trend continued into the 1970s. The Church of Christ was the fastest religious growing body in America. No church, no religion outpaced us. In fact, because of that growth, many of the religious neighbors began to make fun of us, and they even called us names like Campbellites to discourage people from coming to the Church of Christ. We were a growing people. I want you to notice the statistics. I want you to take note of the history of this nation. We grew during World War I. We grew during the Spanish flu, far worse than COVID. We grew during the Great Depression. We grew during World War II. We grew during Korea. We grew during Vietnam. We grew during civil rights. We grew during the feminist movement. Brethren, we grew during every major upheaval this nation has faced. The Church of Christ overcame. The Lord's church is well able and more than conqueror to address any culture, to address any challenge, any obstacle. Brethren, we have proven it in our past. The Lord's church can't be stopped unless we stop. And brethren, we have been sitting in our pews for 4 decades, and we are reaping what we have sown. We have signs all over our buildings come on in, when the Great Commission has nothing to do with come on in. It has everything to do with go on out. And as we sit in our pews waiting for people to come, they're not coming. It's very obvious. Let's just look around us. They're not here this morning. They're not coming. The only way for us to reach them is to go to them. So what's our problem this morning? Let me be very plain. The problem isn't with your God. The problem isn't with His message. The problem is that God's people, by and large, do not believe it works in America. So we will send $10,000 to India. We will send mission teams to Jamaica. We will send our young people to Latin American missions. And while we're doing that, our nation is disintegrating. Our churches are closing their doors at an alarming rate. Brethren, we are losing, on average, 111 churches of Christ every single year. How long do you think you're going to last? How long do you think Farley's going to be here? Brethren, until we address this, we will not survive. Christians don't believe it works. We have an issue with our brethren because we lack faith. We lack the faith to believe that we can reach our communities. We don't believe we can reach our neighbors. We don't believe we can reach our co-workers. In fact, we have seen failure for 3+ decades. And because of that, we sit in our pews and we just hope that we can survive. Perhaps a new Christian family will move in. And that's an exciting Sunday. So the question is, what brought our family here? Brethren, my family was in full-time ministry for 22 years. In our last work, we were there for 11 years. I built my wife's dream home. And we made a decision to sell that house, to get on the road, and to literally go to about 45 churches a year, trying to help churches learn how to grow. And my family lives in a suitcase. We spend 200+ nights a year in the Holiday Inn Express. We packed up last night and we drove 5 hours from LA, Lower Alabama, right up here to Huntsville, Alabama, because we are committed to this work. We know that in a church is trained and members work, they will grow. We have been to churches just like yours all year long. Churches of 50 and 60 members. Some of those churches in the middle of the cornfields, some of them in urban, suburban, and rural areas. And I want to encourage you this week, if you'll apply what you're about to learn over the next few days, it will be a pivot point for your congregation. In fact, many churches and elders will tell me it's one of the most transformational moments in their history. You know, the Jacksonville Church of Christ has had some pretty transformational moments in their history. This is the congregation where house to house, heart to heart was given birth. This is the congregation that gave birth to polishing the pulpit. This is the congregation that gave birth to the marriage retreat. When we first did this at Jacksonville, Alan looked at me and he said, "This has been the most historic event we've ever done in this church." I didn't write that. You have an opportunity this week, if you'll commit yourself, if you will apply yourself, for this to be not only a transformational moment for this congregation, but for this to be a transformational moment for you personally. I'm begging, and I'm begging right now. I'm begging for your attendance, because we cannot help you reach your mother if you're not here. I cannot help you reach your son if you don't come. I cannot help you reach your grandmother, your neighbor, and your best friend if you decide the ball game on Monday night is more important. The only way, brethren, we're going to reach lost people is to focus on being trained. A sermon isn't going to do it. I don't care how gifted your preacher is, a sermon isn't going to do it. We need training in our churches. And this is just the starting point. This is not the finish point. We're here to get things set up. There's no way on earth I can provide you all the training you're going to need. But we're going to get you started. And if the elders so desire, you'll continue that training. We'll provide everything you need from A to Z to make sure that this church is equipped and everyone has a place. Everyone deserves to have a place this morning. Everybody wants to know, where is my spot? What is my role in this church? Or if your role in this congregation is to sit in the pews on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night and check off the attendance box, you're missing out on what Christianity is all about. Christianity is a lot more than just coming to church. I know worship is important, and I'm not diminishing from it in any way, shape, or form. But Christianity is an action word. It is not a sitting word. It requires us to do something. And if we're going to save churches like Farley, it's going to require us to put some effort into it. More than just on Sunday morning. I was sitting in my office, and I received a phone call from a man by the name of Chris Coyle. I didn't know Chris Coyle. Maybe you know Chris Coyle. He's a gospel preacher. And I said, hello, my name is Rob Whitaker. I'm preacher for Willett Church of Christ. He said, my name's Chris Coyle. He said, I'm a preacher. And I said, well, Chris, it's nice to meet you. He says, I need your help, preacher. I said, what is it? He said, well, we've got a family. They just moved to the area. Her name is Scarlett Mitchell. She, when she was dating her husband, William, she was a birdwell. And I said, a birdwell? Well, I know we have a lot of birdwells in the area. I said, okay. Well, in any case, she became a Christian, and she's been talking to her mom and dad, and she reached out to me, and she said, Chris, can you contact a preacher in the Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee area, and to see if someone can do a Bible study with my parents? And I was excited. So I looked you up, and I said, man, I'll call Willett Church of Christ. So he calls, and I'm on the phone with Chris, and he's explaining about this couple, and their names are Jackie and Sheila Birdwell. Well, I wrote this name down, Jackie and Sheila Birdwell. And Chris, I said, you called the right man. I love Bible studies. I'll make sure I call it. Hey, by the way, Chris, on what day is the study scheduled for? He said, well, we haven't scheduled a day just yet. He said, we're still, talking to him. I said, well, Chris, that's okay, morning, noon, or night. You call me whenever you want to. I said, I'm there. It's a Bible study. I said, Chris, when did they request this study? When did the discussion start? He said, they really haven't yet. I said, wait a minute, Chris, let me back up a few paces. I said, you're wanting me to go to the door of Jackie and Sheila Birdwell and say, hi, my name's Rob Whitaker. I'm the preacher for the Church of Christ. I'm here to do a Bible study. And they haven't even asked for a Bible study. He said, yes. I said, Chris, how do you suppose I do that? He said, well, I'm not very sure about that right now. He said, that's your problem now, Brother Whitaker. I'll let Scarlett know I called you. Brother, that was the most unhelpful phone call that I've ever received as a gospel preacher. I mean, I don't know about your strategy, but if I walked up to you and say, hi, my name's Rob Whitaker, and I'm here to do a Bible study, it won't work very well. They're not going to do the study. I took that piece of paper, I crinkled it up, I threw it in my waste paper basket, and I said to myself, that was a waste of time. And I got back to the important things, Josh. Things like folding the church bulletin, things that really matter. Skip a church bulletin and see how long you keep your job. They're very important. And I made sure the church bulletin was folded, and I put it out on the table. And I was about to leave, to go home because I was ready for tomorrow, Sunday morning. And I got in my truck, and brethren, I couldn't leave because I knew what I had done was wrong. I walked right back into that office. I grabbed that piece of paper. I put it right back on my office desk. And I said, Jackie and Sheila, I'm not going to throw two souls away. I don't know what I'm going to do with you, though. On Sunday morning, I got up and I did my job. I did my Sunday morning sermon. I did my Sunday morning Bible class. I did my Sunday afternoon nursing home ministry. And I did my Sunday evening sermon. And I went home and I couldn't sleep. Brethren, I've been preaching the gospel for 15 years full time, and I didn't know how to reach 2 people in my community. I got to the office the next morning. I looked at that piece of paper. They stared at me. I stared at them, and I did not know what to do. Have you ever been to a point in your life where you don't know what to do? I knew exactly what I needed to do. I prayed. I just bowed my head and I said, God, help me. God, I don't know what to do. I said, I got 2 people in this community. I have a preacher reaching out to me, wanting me to study with them. I got their daughter wanting me to study with them. I don't know how to do this. And I said, God, I pray for a door of utterance to be opened. I pray for wisdom. I mean, these are biblical prayers. Ephesians 6, James 1, Colossians 4. And I prayed that prayer, and I got done with that prayer. And I just thought, what is it that I can do to prepare myself for a Bible study with Jackie and Sheila Birdwell? And it dawned on me. I grew up in the Church of Christ. My father served as an elder. My mother did mission work all through the island of Jamaica. I mean, I grew up in a church building. My parents were always very active. And I grew up hearing lectures. I've heard Thomas Warren, Roy Deaver, Guy Woods. I mean, I heard some of the great speakers in the Brotherhood. And let me be very clear. I went to Bible camps. I went to lectureships. Do you know, in all the years that I grew up in the church, maybe it's just me, but I cannot remember one lesson, one sermon about Jesus being the greatest evangelist who ever lived. I can remember sermons about Jesus being the creator of the world. I can remember as a boy, Apologetics Press walking into the church building and mesmerizing the church with their apologetic Christian evidences. I can remember lessons about Jesus being the head of the church. I mean, I can remember those distinctly. I can remember lessons about Jesus being the Savior of the world, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I can remember lessons about Jesus being the returning Lord. I can't remember one lesson that Jesus was the greatest evangelist who ever lived. No, not one. Maybe it's just me. So I opened my Bible and I decided that I'm going to learn. I'm going to understand why Jesus was great. Why was Jesus so good at what he did? What made him good? I mean, what made him the best? And I started studying the Bible studies of Christ, and I learned some things. I learned a lot. I learned that there are things that Jesus did pretty consistently. I mean, just about in every occasion, he does certain things. And I learned that I didn't do those things, and the things that I did that I thought made me just great evangelist, he didn't do any of those things. Jonathan Smith came home from college. Jonathan Smith graduated from the University of Tennessee. His family had been longtime members